Now, Gump Report. This is being done right after my Elimination Chamber. I didn't say it in the video. I'm just going to do it now and release it Sunday. This is about TNA. I had to do it. I said I was going to say something about TNA, and it's time for me to say it. Now, I did do a video before talking about Scott, but I had to do a follow-up on it. And I also got to say this, that I don't know if I'm going to do the Vince McMahon video, because every time I start thinking about it, I start getting very anxious. Knowing full well that things that happen with Vince, I got to report on it, but it's information still coming out, and it's still giving me a little bit of nervousness. So I'm still holding off on it. Maybe there'll be a point where I'll feel a little more comfortable about it, and more information will come out. Not more better information, more information. But I got to say this. What's been going on with TNA? Dude, I've seen the Moose video where he's talking about how he felt about Scott, how Scott is a mentor to him, and he's been feeling very uncomfortable and very, very frustrated. But he does say, as a professional, as uncomfortable I feel, I got to keep moving forward. And if you look on some of the sites, you'll see that Eric Young, after No Surrender, when the cameras were off, even though they still stuck a camera in his face, for some reason it wouldn't show it, that he talked a little bit about Scott, but didn't mention him directly. He talked about, we love this company, we love this business, and we're glad that TNA is back, and we're going to make it mean something, but sometimes things happen, people fall by the wayside. And people that we love, we respect, we care about, they're not here anymore. But we have to do one of two things when it happens, because we can go through shock when we find that someone we care and love is gone. We can do one thing after they're gone, after you get the shock. You can keep the grief, or you can keep moving forward. And that's what he said. He's saying simply, we got to keep moving forward and make this the best we can without that person there, even though we love him. Now, the fans did not boo. They cheered. And that's good to see, because at least in New Orleans, they were able to take that. But let's dive a little deeper in this. Because as I've been checking, because there was a letter sent by the entire wrestling roster, and I believe Moose also signed in on it, because I believe he did put his name there, that they asked the head of Anthem, the CEO of Anthem, to reconsider rehiring Scott D'Amore, because they truly believe, and it's not that Moose, when he did his video talking on a podcast, he was doing a podcast, that he was against what they said, but he's professional enough to understand that he's not happy what happened. He feels a bit frustrated about what happened. He didn't say it directly, but that's how it felt. He's going to keep moving forward with the situation. Now, Moose did sign a new contract with TNA. I believe it's going to be up to 2025, his contract. So he's staying an extra amount of time, maybe about another year and a half to two. Or 2020, I think 2025 to 2020, or somewhere near the end of 2025, his extension is there. Well, not extension, he re-signed. So I think his contract goes up to the end of 2025 to somewhere in the beginning of 2026, because he did sign an extension. Now, why do I keep saying extension? I think it's due to the fact that some others also signed extensions. Don't know who, but I do understand that at least one or two more people have signed extensions. And knowing that Moose did resign, and it's going up to a near 2026, so he will be there a little longer, but now without Scott there, who was the reason he resigned. And you can see from the reports from several other sites that AJ Francis, was given a chance and was given the opportunity to come to TNA because of Scott. Jordan Grace resigned. We know that. And it's due to Scott. And as I said during my No Surrender review, you can see Gazelle Shaw, I believe his girlfriend, and I know you're going to say girlfriend. Yes, girlfriend. Just deal with it. But his own girlfriend, I don't believe has resigned, but she looked upset even though she is professional. What does this all really mean? I'll give it to you like this. We do not know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. As heartfelt as Eric Young was in his talk, and as Moose said he's willing to go forward, Eric Young, I'm sure others are going to say the same thing, does not make a difference. It comes down to one thing, just one. What is the CEO of Anthem going to do when he wants to make TNA something that it's not? We know for a fact, so far, there's nothing that's come out that said that Scott did something unlawful or something perverted. Nothing. Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they say something? Nothing. He's just gone. He tried to buy the company and they fired him. If he was trying to hide he did something sexually unlawful, this would have come out and made it worse for him. No. They didn't agree. Scott and the CEO of Anthem, I can't remember his name right now, could not agree. Scott wants to keep TNA as a promotion, and I believe the CEO wants to make TNA another part of his network, another cog in the wheel, not its own separate thing that can grow and make money for Anthem as its own entity, but he wants it, and this is the CEO, he wants to just make it a piece of the corporation where it doesn't stand out, and the corporation means more than TNA would. That's what I believe is the situation that both came to a head, and that's why Scott tried to, and supposedly again, try to buy TNA. He tried many, many years ago, I guess before Dixie Carter tried to come in, and the Jarrett said no. And I found out that Scott was willing to get $10 million for TNA. And I'm sure people are going to say, dude, that's nothing. That's chump change. That is a fucking offer. You can't just say no. And the report stated that it was a legitimate offer that was considered and rejected. So $10 million for the company, because Scott knows how much the company usually gets for its budget, because remember, Anthem only gives TNA, or Impact as it used to be called, a amount of money yearly to run its day-to-day utility operations, to make sure they can pay for any lights when they go to the arena, pay for their trucks, pay for the electronics, well, whatever type of things they need, maybe for medical, whatever, for their basic day-to-day operations, but not to allow it to do everything else, like to go to different places, to get the venues, to pay for the wrestlers. That's still the budget of TNA. This is TNA's budget. This is the budget Anthem gives them, possibly yearly. TNA still has to do its own money making. This is the Anthem budget. This is TNA what it's got to make on its own. Look at it. It's not this. It's not. It's the opposite. If they do not make money in other ways, it is a waste, and they would have been basically ended. Because that means Anthem would not gain anything in its investment through the stock market. Remember, they make money. Yeah, it's possible that Anthem can get a budget back, money back from TNA. Some corporations can do that through its satellite companies, because TNA is a satellite company. It is. But normally, the only thing that matters to a corporation when it has satellite corporations, the asset of it being in existence drives the stock market, which gives them money that way. The equity of the stock market, not the equity actually liquid in the actual company itself. Because the company may be worth $30 million. Maybe. And the key of it is, if he's willing to give $10 million and the remaining $20 million goes with all the debt as well as whatever liquid assets they have, that is a fair market value price. He managed to get it, and they rejected it. So you cannot say that Impact, or TNA, was getting this from Anthem, when normally, when it comes to a satellite company and a corporation, they have this much, and they got to make their own profit. This. So don't try it. I understand how the corporate system works. So what are we really getting here? We don't know yet. Now, supposedly, after Hard to Kill, we had several recordings. That was made with Scott's team in place along with Scott. Scott is now gone. So now, after No Surrender, either the next Impact will be the first one, or the one after that will be the first one where they've already started doing the recordings for it. Either we're going to see new stuff this Thursday or next Thursday without Scott's input. So that means you're going to have Tommy Dreamer, supposedly as the head of creative. You're going to have Gail Kim working with him. I'm sure Delirious is there as well. We know that Ace Steel is a producer, which he could help in creative aspects. And I do believe there's one other person, I can't remember right now. So it's either 4 or 5 people who will be dealing with creative. And that's a major issue, because now instead of having one person who gives a direction, like if Scott was there, he would say, I want to do a direction where Moose would hold the title all the way to Bound for Glory. We're going to book everything around how he's booking going to Bound for Glory in the system. And they would start working on how they're going to write for Moose keeping the title and everyone else around him, which would be Brian Myers, Eddie Edwards, Alicia Edwards, and everyone else. They would start booking under it. None of that is there. Since the president has no clue how to run a promotion because he's never been a wrestler, and he doesn't probably have anything in the understanding creative aspects, we're going to have 4 or 5 people who are now going to have to debate about which story would be best to go forward. Because they'll keep giving stories, but which one will be the dominant story that everything else is going to be lynching off of? Because remember, if you want to book a wrestling promotion and you have a champion as a woman, champion as a man, and then a mid-card for the men and women, you got to book everyone off of what you're doing primarily for them. The champion for the men, you got to book off of each one at least enough that it'll at least look consistent. Now, has that always happened with Impact Wrestling? No. But it has been nearly 60-40 in my humble perspective. 60-40 where they do kind of chain everything together, but there's always some type of variation because it's either gotten a little sloppy or maybe someone got hurt in the middle of it and they had to change course on it. That's how it is. But usually it's like 60-40. You can't always do 50-50. It's like in this case with TNA, it's been 60-40 in my humble perspective. Of course, you can have something, you could say 80-20 or 70-30. You will say whatever you want. It's up to you. But I say 60-40. Now that we don't have that, and now we're going to have people debating about what Moose is going to be doing, what Jordan Grace is going to be doing, and how you're going to book the women and men after that. How are you going to book Crazy Steve? How are you going to book Chris Sabin? How are you going to book DK or MK Ultra or Jody Threat and Danny Luna? How are you going to book these people when debating goes on and there's not one direct voice who's over everyone that says simply, I want it like this? And if you say, dude, they got a president, he'll sign off on it. He said it himself that he will refer to them. He is not getting involved, at least until the CEO of Anthem calls him and tells him, hey, I can't remember Anthony. I think his name is Anthony, the current president. I can't remember his name, and I'm not even going to try and botch his name. Anthony and this CEO, I want this done in TNA. Said, you want this? Okay. He goes to everyone in creative, and he says, I just been told, you got to do this. And he said, oh, we can't do that right now. And he said, I've been told this by our CEO. Get it done. Okay? And they'll have no choice. Just like what it was for Triple H when Vince spoke to him, and now Ari, Nick, and even more so, The Rock, who is over him. Because remember, you got Ari, you got Nick, and then you have well, I shouldn't say it like that, because you're going to have Ari, then you're going to have The Rock, and then you're going to have Nick, because Nick may be the CEO of WWE when it's TKO WWE. He may be the CEO of the fake WWE, but you got Ari, you're going to have The Rock, and then you're going to have Nick, and then you're going to have Triple H. You've got to listen to any one of them because they're on the chain. And he's got to obey any of them. Even though he may try to debate it, he's going to say, okay. And no matter if the show looks bad, that's what you get. So that's what's going to happen when we have TNA. Now, mind you, look what's happened with AEW. Jen Peppermint, Peppermint has now joined creative with Tony. Now, if Tony's willing to give up control of maybe half of creative, they may have a chance to really rewrite everything that's been going on for the last year that's been sucky for the women and hasn't been great for the men. We won't know for at least a couple of months. If they hire someone in the creative aspects who knows about wrestling, because, and I know people would say, dude, she's a fucking soap opera writer. She's been working for WWE for 7 years. Do not think she doesn't understand how pro wrestling works. When she was first brought in by Steph, yes, we had perfect right to chew her out. But she's been there for 7 years. 7. There's no way she didn't pick up what pro wrestling is, how storylines are written. She probably knows it. Now, I'm not saying she'll do it great, but she understands it. So, Jen Peppermint will probably be able to write good stories. Maybe if we're lucky, great stories, but easily good. Because remember, Vince was tearing up fucking scripts, so don't go there. Vince was tearing up scripts, so we never saw her work. So don't. Don't even try that with me. But when it comes here in TNA, they need someone who can give a direction. And unfortunately, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get a creative direction. Even if Tommy Dreamer is the head of creative, he still has to report to Anthony. I do believe his name is Anthony. And Anthony, who is the president, is not even in creative aspects. He doesn't know. He can learn like Eric Bischoff did. But after being in the business 30 years, remember, Eric was still very young when he took over WCW. He had not been in TV very long, maybe a couple of years. This guy's been in it for 30 years in TV networks. Unlike when it comes to Eric, who just finished being in business in college and joined Turner and understood business and managed to adapt very quickly because he was so young. This guy didn't. So he's too stiff. That's what we're going to have. So when it comes down to it, until the guy who runs Anthem decides, okay, this is not working, either I got to bring back maybe Scott or bring someone else in to run TNA, because I don't think this is going to go smoothly. Look, I love Tommy. If he is the current head of creative for TNA, I love Tommy. I do. Tommy Dreamer is a great pro wrestler. And he can write. But as the head of creative, or at least one of the people who's the head of creative, because I do believe Gail Kim is his partner in it, and everyone else is under them. Honestly, with 4 or 5 people there, even with a Steele there as a producer and could be a writer and part of creative, Tommy is not going to be the lead. And neither is Gail Kim for that matter. Neither one of them are really, really built for that. They're not. Scott, I can easily said, well, not said. I think the reason I botch here is I want people to understand I've never been a huge fan of Scott. I respect Scott, and I didn't always agree with the creative aspects of what directions he went. Like what happened with Tessa Blanchard, how they wrote her, instead of writing her like a Bryan Danielson. No, they just wrote her as a woman who finally got a position where she can go after a title as a woman, not as a underdog. That I didn't agree with. They didn't need to go there with her. They could have written her like China, or they could have written her like China or Bryan Danielson. They chose to just write her as a woman getting an opportunity where she would never get like a black man. I think that was a wrong move. Now, was it effectively done? Yes, I did say that. I just didn't agree with the creative aspects. But it cannot take away that he's highly intelligent and he understands his business and he loved it enough to try and get $10 million to pay for the company that is maybe worth $30 million with either liquid assets and debt. Remember, that $30 million isn't just the liquid assets that the company has that's getting from the merch sales, that's getting from the app or YouTube app, Fight app, the budget they get from Anthem. They also have debt. So it could be up to at least $30 million with everything including debt. So he tried it. But it's gonna be a while before we know. And I'm gonna tell you every time from now on until either they change direction, get somebody new as the president, or if the company's sold and either bought by, I don't even know if Scott could probably, he may try again. But whatever, I will tell you what's going on. Peace.